In the Tanzanian savanna, you learn a hard truth. You don't find the story finds you. And usually, it finds you when you're low on gas and the sun is threatening to clock out. My name is Dr. Aris Kaelo. I'm a wildlife veterinarian. Most days, that means checking fence lines, monitoring herd health, and dealing with paperwork. But not today. I was on the long northern patrol, heading back to base, my mind already on a hot shower and a cold beer. That's when I saw it. Not a herd, not a threat, just a smudge, a tiny dust-colored smudge wobbling in the middle of the trek. I slammed the brakes. The Jeep skidded, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Through the haze, the smudge took shape. It was a lion cub, maybe 6, 7 weeks old, impossibly small. It stood right in the path of a 2-ton vehicle and didn't even flinch. It just opened its mouth and let out a thin, desperate squeak. "Hey," I said, leaning out the window. "Hey, little guy, you are very, very lost. Where is your mother?" I got out of the Jeep. Standard procedure is to never approach a cub. Where there's a cub, there's a 400-pound mother who assumes you have bad intentions. I clapped my hands. "Go on, shoo! Get out of the road!" The cub just stared at me, its oversized ears drooping. It took 2 wobbly steps toward me. "No, no, no, no," I muttered, backing up. "This is all wrong." I tried again. I stamped my foot. Go!" The cub stumbled back, not in fear, but in confusion. It looked at me, then looked hard to the left, into a dense thicket of acacia thorn. It let out that same heartbreaking squeak. Then it did the one thing I've never seen in 20 years. It ran. Not away from me. It ran 10 feet toward the thicket, then stopped and looked back over its shoulder. It was a clear, unmistakable invitation, a plea. My blood ran cold.
"Okay," I whispered, grabbing my trauma kit and 2 liters of water from the Jeep. "Okay, I'm coming. Show me." The cub bolted. It wasn't fast, but it was determined. I had to half jog to keep up, the thorns tearing at my pants. It led me away from the track, down a dry, rocky creek bed. The air grew still, heavy, the smell of dust and something metallic, something wrong. And then I heard her, a low, guttural moan. The cub ran ahead and disappeared behind a fallen log. I rounded it, and my stomach dropped. It was the mother, a big, beautiful lioness, or she had been. She was caught in a poacher snare. A loop of bicycle brake cable, anchored to a deep-set stake, was pulled agonizingly tight around her left hind leg. She had fought it. The ground around her was torn up. The cable had sliced through the skin, all the way to the bone. The wound was bad, swollen, black, alive with infection. She was dying. I dropped to one knee. The lioness lifted her head. Her eyes were glazed with fever and dehydration. She tried to growl, a warning, but it came out as a dry cough. The cub, her cub, ran to her side and started nudging frantically at her face, trying to get her to respond. I pulled out my radio. "Base, this is Kaelo. Come in."
"Base," I yelled. "I have a lioness, adult female, in a wire snare. Northern sector, grid 47 Delta. She is critical. Severe infection, severe dehydration. I need a support team with bolt cutters and a crate. Now." The static crackled.
"Copy. Aris. Bad storm cell moving in. We'll try, but it could be 2 hours, maybe more."
2 hours. I looked at the sky. The sun was already kissing the horizon. In 30 minutes, it would be pitch black. In 2 hours, she'd be dead. "Copy that, Base," I said,
my voice tight. "I'll do what I can." I clicked off the radio. The lioness watched me, her sides barely moving. The little cub, I started calling him Kani, a local word for brave, was pacing anxiously. "All right, girl. I'm not going to hurt you. Connie brought me here." I unzipped my kit. I needed to get fluids in her, get that fever down. But first, water. I uncapped my canteen and poured some into a shallow metal bowl from my kit. I pushed it toward her nose. She didn't have the strength to lift her head. The cub, watching me, pushed the bowl with his own nose closer to his mother's mouth, meowing. "Good boy, Connie," I murmured. I took a large, sterile cloth, soaked it in water, and gently dabbed her mouth and nose. Her eyes focused on me, not with rage, gratitude. She licked feebly at the wet cloth. I was prepping a wide-bore IV line when Connie suddenly froze. He stood bolt upright, his tiny mane bristling. His head snapped toward the ridge. And then I heard it. Hyenas. It wasn't one or two. It sounded like the entire clan. They had smelled the infection. They had smelled death. And they were coming for a free meal. The lioness heard it too. A surge of adrenaline she shouldn't have possessed made her snap her head up. She gave a full, terrifying roar. It was a mother's defiance. "You will not take my child." But the roar ended in a hacking cough, and she collapsed, spent. The hyenas giggled in response. They were closer now. I could see their silhouettes against the twilight. 10, 15, maybe 20. They formed a wide, patient circle just beyond the light of my headlamp. I was trapped. I was a veterinarian, a healer. I had a dart gun, but it was loaded with tranquilizers, not bullets. I was stuck, in the dark, between a pack of nature's most efficient killers and the family they wanted to tear apart. Connie was terrified. He scrambled onto his mother's weak body, trying to hide. "No," I said, my voice shaking. I stood up. "No! Get out of here! Go!" I grabbed a rock and threw it. It clattered uselessly in the dark. The hyenas didn't even flinch. One, a massive female with a scarred muzzle, took a bold step forward. I sprinted back to the jeep. It was 50 yards away, an eternity. I fumbled in the back, my hands shaking so hard that I could barely grip the metal box. I found what I was looking for, the emergency flare gun. I ran back, sliding on the loose rocks. The circle had tightened. The scarred female was now only 20 yards from the lioness. "Back off!" I screamed. I fired the flare straight at her. It exploded in a shower of blinding red magnesium, arcing over her head. The pack scattered. Hyenas hate fire. They yelped and fell back, disappearing into the darkness. Silence. I reloaded the flare gun, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had one flare left. I turned back to the lioness. "Help is coming," I whispered, though I was mostly saying it to myself. I had to work fast. I couldn't move her, not with that leg, but I could get the IV in. I tied a tourniquet on her foreleg, found a vein. She was so dehydrated, the vein was like a string. She didn't even protest as the needle went in. "That's it, girl. Fight. You have to fight." Connie came out from behind his mother, and in a shocking display of trust, rubbed his head against my boot. He was trembling. 10 minutes passed. 20. The IV bag was halfway empty. The lioness's breathing was a little stronger. Then the giggling returned. They were back. and this time the flare trick wouldn't work. They knew it was just light. They were smarter than that. The scarred leader emerged first. She wasn't laughing. She was all business. The pack fanned out. They were going to rush us. Connie let out a furious, tiny roar. A squeak, really. He stood in front of his mother, planting his small body between her and the pack. "Oh, Connie, you're too brave for your own good." I stood beside him. I had my flare gun and a heavy-duty tire iron I'd grabbed from the Jeep. It was me, a baby lion, and a dying mother against 20 hyenas. The odds were laughable. The scarred female lunged. It was a test, a feint. She darted in, snapped her powerful jaws, and darted back out, trying to draw me away. "I'm not moving," I yelled. They began to circle, tighter and tighter. The smell was overpowering. They were going to charge. Connie was hissing, a sound I didn't know he could make. The leader lunged again, this time for real. I fired my last flare, not at her, but at the ground right in front of her.
It hit the dry grass and whooshed into a wall of flame. The hyena shrieked and jumped back, her fur singed. The pack recoiled, confused by the sudden fire. It bought me 30 seconds, and in that 30 seconds I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Headlights cut through the smoke and darkness. 2 trucks, my team. They barreled through the bush, not even bothering with the track. They drove straight at the hyena pack, horns blasting. The pack, caught between a fire and 2 roaring metal beasts, finally broke. They vanished into the night as quickly as they had come. I dropped the tire iron. My knees buckled. I almost fell, but a hand grabbed my arm. It was Marcus, my team leader. "You're insane, Kaelo," he said, but he was smiling. "Holding a barbecue?" "Just get her out," I managed to say. The team worked with practiced, beautiful efficiency. Marcus, a giant of a man, took one look at the snare and cursed. "Poachers are getting lazy. This is brutal." He used the bolt cutters. The cable sprang free. The lioness was sedated, crated, and loaded onto the truck in less than 10 minutes. Connie was put in a smaller carrier, which I insisted on keeping in the cab with me. We drove back to the sanctuary in near silence, the adrenaline fading, leaving only a deep, profound exhaustion. Connie whimpered in his crate, and I reached through the bars, letting him lick my fingers. The next 72 hours were critical. The surgery to clean the wound took 4 hours. The infection was deep. We flooded her with antibiotics, painkillers, and fluids. Connie stayed in an adjoining enclosure where he could see his mother through a secure fence. He never stopped watching her. For 2 days, she didn't move. On the 3rd morning, I came in with my coffee, expecting the worst. She was standing. She was wobbly, she was thin, but she was standing. Connie was at the fence chirping. When she saw me, she didn't growl, she just looked at me. Then she laid her head back down and slept. But I knew. She had turned the corner. We named her El Kheri, which means grace. For 2 months we rehabilitated her. The wound healed, leaving a deep silvery scar. Connie grew, his squeak turning into a real rumbling purr. He and I developed a ritual. Every morning I'd bring his food, and he'd rub his head against the fence, purring like a chainsaw. Finally, the day came. Dr. Ben, our director, gave the all clear. "She's 100%. It's time."
We drove them far, to a protected part of the reserve, rich with game and far from any snares. Marcus opened the crate. Al-Kheri stepped out into the sunlight. She was magnificent. Her coat was golden, her muscles powerful. She stretched, a long, luxurious cat stretch, flexing her newly healed leg. She looked at the wide-open plains. She looked back at me. Connie bounded out after her, a clumsy, oversized teenager now. He immediately tried to pounce on a butterfly. Alheri walked over to me. I stood very still. This was her world, her rules. She stopped 3 feet away. She just looked. I've spent my life studying these animals, but in that moment, I had no idea what she was thinking. Then she did something I'll never forget. She stepped forward, closed the distance, and gently, unbelievably gently, rubbed her massive head against my thigh, the same way Connie had all those weeks ago. A thank you, a bond. Then she turned, called to her son, and the two of them walked side by side into the tall grass, their tails held high, until the savanna reclaimed them. They say you're not supposed to get attached. You're not supposed to get emotional. But in the savanna, you don't always get to choose. Sometimes the story finds you, and if you're very, very lucky, you get to be a part of it.